Hi, this is Trotz from AMALYTIX. This is the third part of our three-part series where we use Python to analyze Amazon advertising bike sheets. In the first part, we looked at loading the data. In the second part, we analyzed it. And now in the third part, we create a bike sheet, which you can then upload to optimize your campaigns. Let's go. Okay, let's dive right in. As I mentioned in the first part, we loaded our data. I'm again in my big file. I renamed it now to Analyze Amazon Bike Sheets, IPython Jupyter Notebook. And in the first part, we loaded the data. In the second part, we analyzed it. And now in the third part, we will create a bike sheet from scratch based on the data we analyzed. So the overall idea here in this video is to create a bike sheet for your sponsor products campaigns, which includes new negative keywords or paused product targets, namely those which are underperforming based on certain thresholds. So what you can do then, if you run the script, you will get a new bike sheet, which you can then upload to optimize your campaigns so you don't waste any money on underperforming search terms, for example. So let's dive right in. And if you want to better understand how this all works, go back to the first part of this video. There we show you in detail how to load the data, what we are doing here, what data is available, how we analyze it. I will skip this only briefly. First of all, I will restart anything so everything is clear and fresh here right now. So let's go right in and run everything we need to run our script. So we have defining some variables here. As I said, we have already downloaded our bike sheet here via the advertising console. Here's the link where you can get it. I've already deployed it here in my IPython Jupyter Notebook. So we have set our variables. We are now loading the bike sheet. And although we have data for sponsor product, sponsor brand, sponsor display, today we will only cover sponsor products. But the principle is the same. Sponsor display is a little bit different, but to keep this video short and educational, I will only go into sponsor products. So let's load only sponsored products, which takes some time because here I have a bike sheet from a bigger advertiser, which contains quite a lot of data, but this makes it also more interesting. And I will skip the part here about sponsor brands data. I will also skip the part about sponsor display, and we won't also look at the data and we don't want to analyze it. I will directly start here, create a bike sheet with negative keywords and paused target for sponsored products. So the data now has been loaded, and as a quick refresher, let's look on what we are working with. So we have two data frames right now. The data frames from the sheet in the Excel file, which is called sponsor product campaigns. And we have the sheet which includes the search term data for sponsored products. Yeah, just as a refresher, let's look at the data we have here in our sponsor products thing. We here have the different entities. There are already negative keywords in there. We have the keywords, product targeting, everything. We also have the IDs here we need, and also we have the performance data. This is very helpful. And we also have the sponsor products search term data. And here we have the customer search terms, also including the performance metrics. And this is everything we need to create a bike sheet from scratch, basically. And to get that, we have defined a method here, which is called get non-performing targets for negative keywords. I have used this long name because early on we have a similar method. So I added this for negative keywords. But if you refactor this, you can of course use the same method for both here. And what it is doing is it's working with sponsor display as well. But as we have sponsor products here, it first just looks for targets which have a minimum number of clicks and a maximum number of ROAS. And the default values are 20 clicks and ROAS a maximum ROAS of 2. So everything which is below this ROAS and has more clicks than that will be included. This makes sure that we are not looking at search terms which only have a handful of clicks, because this can be just a random result. And we're also looking at ROAS here, which is less than 2, to make sure that we are only at really underperforming search terms. But of course, it's up to you to set those variables based on your needs and your expectations. So this thing here then returns just underperforming targets. Let's have a quick look at how this looks like. I'm just running this right now. Oh, we get an error here right away. Because I forgot to run it. So let's run it first, the samples again. And now let's take a look how it looks like. So, and here I get right now, I've run it for minimum number of clicks 20, max ROAS of 2. Sponsor display is not, because we are using our sponsor product search term thing here. And now I received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements here. So here now I have 5 different search terms and 3 ASINs here, which are meeting our criteria, namely minimum number of clicks and a ROAS less than 2. And Now, the next step would be to add those to a new bike sheet. And to do that, we have this method here, which is named create bike sheet sponsored products. And this also accepts min clicks and max ROAS, and it will use this data to call this method here then again. And we can also define for example, for the search terms, the default match type. I've used negative exact here, but you can also use negative phrase here, for example. And we'll do 3 things here. First, we will add search terms which are meeting our criteria. Then we add negative product targets. And then we also pause non-performing product targets we can find in our sponsor product bulk sheet. And to do that, first we create an empty bulk sheet, and I'm hard coding here now those column names. Those are the minimum number of names we need to define. We don't need to set everything, but we need those. We need to set it for sponsor products. So the entity needs to be set, and we'll set them later. We'll need to define the operation. We set a default to create, for example, because if you want to add new negative keywords, we need to create them first. And then there are some ideas we set, but I think it will become more clear if we run it. So this will be basically our empty bulk sheet here. So we create an empty sheet based on this object here now. So now we have an empty data frame basically. And in the first step, and this starts here right now, we are adding negative keywords for non-performing. Keywords is not the right thing. Search terms would be better here. So let's name it search terms. So we are running this method, which gives us basically those search terms here. And in the next step, it also makes sure that we don't have any product targeting in here or category targeting. And then we go through each of those rows, and we also check to not add an ASIN as a negative search term. As you can see here, we also received some ASINs here, and I want to remove those. This is why we check against this regular expression here. And if we find an ASIN, we just skip this iteration and jump to the next one. So it only really contains search terms. And then we add this to our empty bulk sheet. So we set it as negative keyword. You could also use campaign negative keyword here if you want to set it on a campaign level. This way, we set it on an ad group level. Important to know, because for sponsor products, you can set negative keywords on both levels, basically, or negative targets. Then we take the campaign ID, and this is already part of the sponsor product search term sheet, the ad group ID. This is necessary to set it on ad group level, basically. Of course, we need the search term. Then we set it to the negative keyword match type, which is defined here. And however you call this method, you can also set it to negative phrase if you want to. We set the state to enabled, and we also add the campaign name and also the ad group name. I'm not sure if this is really necessary, but it's nice to have that. If you look at the bulk sheet later, it's more clear where you would find or would expect those negative search terms. And then we just add it to our empty bulk sheet. And this is basically it. This is our first step. And now we will look at those ASINs basically and set them as negative product targets, because we excluded them specifically here. And now we'll do the other thing. We only look for ASINs which are underperforming, and we will add them as a negative product targeting entity. So we do the same thing. Here I'm filtering directly. I don't use the method we have defined before. So I'm looking specifically for everything where here's a product targeting expression or a category targeting expression. And then I'm skipping everything which is not an ASIN. So the other way around. So to make sure that here in our customer search term, we only have ASINs basically. And we do the same thing. We create an object and then we add it to our bulk sheet. Done. And then in the third step, we are now looking at non-performing product targets. For example, everything which has product targeting entity. And also here we make sure that we get the minimum number of clicks and the maximum number of ROAS here. We apply this filter and then we iterate through it again. Same thing. We are set the entity now to, I think, product targeting. We do an update here. It's not a create because it already exists. We need to pause it. That's the difference here. So we not create, we are not adding negative keywords here, but we are updating the existing one and just pause them. So as you can see here, we set the state to paused and the operation is update here, but the rest is pretty much the same thing. And then we are adding it, and then we are doing some cleanup to really make sure that there's no entry in the data frame, which is kind of empty, because then we would get an error once we upload the data to Amazon. So, and we also remove any duplicates. So if we have the same keyword, so the same negative keyword in the same ad group idea, we remove that and just keep one. Same with the product targeting expression. If we would find the same product targeting expression for whatever reason with the same ad group, we also remove any duplicates. And then we also remove any empty lines where we don't have an entity set, because this would directly lead to an error during uploading. And then we have our bulk sheet. And we can do the same thing here for sponsor brand, sponsor display based on the same logic here. here. A sponsored display, of course, is a bit different. Sponsored brands, you also need to differentiate between those two cases of multiple or non-multiple ad groups. But the theory is the same and the approach how to solve it as well. So yeah, let's run it. Here now we're calling this method. So what we do is we give this method our sponsored products campaign sheet, the search term data. We set the min clicks to 20, max ROAS to 2. We set the negative keyword match type to negative exact. As I said, negative phrase would be also possible. And then we export it to Excel, basically here. And then we also show it. So let's run it. First, I think I need to execute. I need to execute this method so it becomes available. And now we can run it. And now, as I said, we have 2 entries here, both negative keywords. If I would set those things here a little bit less restrictive, so if I would allow a max ROAS of 2 and only 10 clicks, then we would directly get more entries here. We would get more negative keywords, more negative product targeting, and also product targeting values here. As you can see, those are now paused, though we are adding some accents here as a negative product targeting expression. And here we have our negative keywords also setting as negative exact. And what you can see right now here is this thing here, which is our new bike sheet. So I think let's open it up because it just has been created. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. So let's open it that you can see how it looks like. Let's open it up. And this is our bike sheet here, basically. Don't worry if those numbers look strange to you right now. What you can just do, you can just set it to numbers here, and then you will see it's just a plain number. You can even remove those digits here because as you see here, this is the campaign ID, ad group ID, and we also have the product target ID. And we also have this. And yeah, this is our bike sheet. And now what you can do now is you go back to this bike sheet page, and here you can upload it. So you choose the file, you upload it, and then watch out for the status here. And if everything works fine, it should be shown as here, finished successfully, 2 of 2 processed. And this is it. So what you can do now with this script, you can continuously download a bike sheet for the last 30 data, run it through the script, get a suggestion for negative keywords. Of course, what you should do is you should take a look here first before you upload it to avoid that you don't have any mistakes here, because there can always be errors in this kind of script. So always make a manual review before you upload something. But this makes it very easy to find underperforming search terms, which you can directly set to negative. And this then optimizes your campaign directly. So I think this is it. Yeah, let me know what you think, what you really would like to cover. This concludes our 3-part series of working with Amazon bike sheets and Python. Let me know in the comments what we should do next, what you are interested in, because Python and bike sheets are really powerful. We covered only possibly a fraction of what is possible. Yeah, and please subscribe our channel here because we are planning to publish more informative videos like that. Check also out our blogs. Sometimes we post something there as well about Python and also other stuff. And please check out our tool, AMALYTIX.com, because what we did here manually is most often included in our tool. So you not even need to run it. You just click a couple of buttons and we show you the data, which is really interesting. So check out our tool, AMALYTIX.com. And yeah, would love to see you in one of our next video. Bye-bye.